Good day, everyone. I am Imerly Manzano from BSE English, and now I'm going to discuss to you about one of the most prominent literary personalities of Latin American literature, which is Romulo Gallegos. To begin with, let's read his biography. Romulo Gallegos or Romulo Gallegos Freire was born in Caracas, which is the capital of Venezuela on 1884 and died in 1969 in his hometown. He is also considered as one of Venezuela's most notable novelists of 20th century. He is an educator, a political leader, and a former president of the Republic of Venezuela. In his early life, he enrolled at the Central University of Venezuela to pursue a law degree. But prior his career becoming a writer, life has never been easy for Romulo Gallegos because before becoming the writer that he is, he experienced hardships as a child and struggles where he had to stand as a support system of the family since the death of his mother. But later on, he strived for the best and pursued a law degree as mentioned earlier at the Central University of Venezuela, which he abandoned shortly in 1905 to become a writer instead. He chose secondary school teaching as his vocation. And as an educator and a political minded person, he get to influence some of the significant personalities who would later lead ranks in the politics, including Romulo Betancourt, who also became the president of Venezuela, and Raul Leone, who's also known figure in the Republic of Venezuela. They all are determined to plot a rebellion against the dictator that time, which is Juan Vicente Gomez, who Gallegos personally despised because of its dictatorship and the ills that the ills that he did to the country. Gomez became his major subject of criticism in his novels, especially about the cruelty and barbarism whom he projected in his novels. When it comes to his literary career, it was not as a teacher or a political leader that Gallegos was to achieve greatest fame, because it is in writing. But even though Gallegos has various fields he became active on or he participated on, it was neither teaching and politics that brought him greatest success, but as said earlier, it was in writing because in 1921, when he was 37 years old, he published his first novel, Reynaldo Solar, which is set inspired in Venezuelan plains and valleys, which is his typical subjects in his works, describing the life, the customs, and even the attributes of the people and the place itself. And of course, 5 years later, his second work, La Trepadora, appeared. But among his literary works, it was his novel entitled Doña Barbara that was published in Spain in 1929 that brought him prestige and worldwide attention. In fact, it is his most famous novel. Doña Barbara is his most famous work, and it's also considered as the classic of Latin American literature. And just a short snippet about this, I will not go over all the details because it will be further discussed by the next reporter. But in here, he tackled about the two opposing concepts of civilization and barbarism. Civilization means well-mannered, educated, and respected people, whereas in barbarism, it means violence, savagery, and uncivilized, which we can infer that it is the two opposing forces and a dichotomy of the two opposing things. So just as that, it will be reported or further discussed by the next presenter. And when it comes to the themes and techniques of Gallegos that he's incorporating through his works, his novels combined realism with a deep-seated conviction that civilization would overcome barbarism and that goodness would overcome evil. So in this one, the authors from late 19th century to early 20th century focus on what they are so called the indigenous question, or about the opposing concepts of civilization and barbarism. And as mentioned earlier, Gallegos aimed in discussing about these and to bring out a significant message that educated and civilized people can get rid of violence and cruelty, and that goodness will take over evils, which is laid down in his works or in his narratives. So Gallegos follows a traditional technique with direct dialogues, linear structure, chapters started by epigraphs, and etc. So just like any other authors, Gallegos tend to follow linear structure in writing with his novels, where it adopts the conventional way, where it is arranged in chronological order or by chapter. He also uses epigraphs or statements and quotations placed in the beginning or before every chapter begins. Usually, epigraphs hints about the themes or the possible subject matter that will appear or that will be mentioned in that specific chapter of the story. In his prose, the influence of modernism is evident, and since it's approaching 20th century, Romulo Gallegos began to explore new techniques and break with the past forms and search for new expressions in better delivering his writings or his narratives. And as you can see in the presentation, this is his most famous literary works of all time. So that include the following. First, Doña Barbara, which was published in 1929, which was first mentioned as his most famous novel. Next is Canta Claro, which was published in 1934. So this one is concerned with the adventures of a cowboy in the Great Plains of Venezuela, as his other novels relied on reality of regional circumstances and the narratives about the Venezuelan setting. Next is the Canaima, which was published in 1935. Negro, which was published in 1937. So it is a historical novel that traces the history or the social history of Venezuelan people. So in this one, it shows how slavery is a huge deal or is a huge struggle back then. It is also about the unemployment and all the other issues tackled here, where Venezuelan people or the black Venezuelan natives resorted to taking the federalist side to retrieve their aimed social equality. So next, his other literary works include El Forastero, which was translated in English as The Stranger, which was published in 1942. Sobre La Minachera, which was translated in English, Over the Same Ground, which was published in 1943. La Rebelión, which was published in 1946. La Brisna de Paja en el Viento, which was translated in English as A Straw in the Wind in 1952. El Último Patriota in 1957, and La Tierra Bajo los Pies in 1971. Just a short trivia as well, Romulo Gallegos has been nominated before in the Nobel Prize Award, which is a prestigious award-giving body in 1960. So it was a prestigious and most famous award that a writer um, can get. So this was really a memorable nomination for Gallegos. With his political involvement, Gallegos became increasingly involved and active in politics after the death of the dictator Juan Vicente Gomez. But prior that, just to backtrack, he was remembered to leave the country when the dictator Gomez offered him a seat or a position in the Senate, which he refused to respond to because he despised that dictator. But after the death of his um, hated dictator, he went back to Venezuela, or he flew back to Venezuela and became increasingly active again in the politics. And in 1948, he became the first ever freely elected president of the Venezuelan Republic. However, his presidency just lasted for only 9 months since his administration had faced a major backlash or a conspiracy by some of the military groups and or militant elements who oppose civilian control, since he's not in any way affiliated in any militant groups. So he was sent to exile in Cuba and Mexico, where he spent his life writing novel as well. So novels that he wrote while he is in exile in Mexico and Cuba are La Brisna de Poja El Viento and La Tierra Bajo los Pies, which dealt with Cuban and Mexican themes respectively. Later on, in 1958, after the fall of the military dictatorship that threw him away from his regime or administration, he went back to Venezuela to serve in Senate and died in 1969. So that's all that you need to know about Romulo Gallegos and his career, his life, and of course his works. So thank you for listening.